So I know we haven't made a video in almost a week now, it might be a little bit more than that for you guys at this point, but there hasn't really been a lot going on, but there's enough news that's piled up now at this point that I feel like I finally have something to talk about. So let's start with the oldest news. The Suicide Squad game got delayed, and I actually talked about all of this gameplay stuff from State of Play and all of these trailers they showed off and the little bit of gameplay that they showed and my thoughts on it in a previous video, so if you want to go watch that, that's over there, so I don't have to go too deep into it here. But essentially a lot of people weren't happy with it and they decided to delay the game from May to I believe September, which just so happens to be the same time that Starfield is coming out. So that's kind of funny, which also got delayed. But what I wanted to compare this to, what I've been thinking of the past couple of days, is what other game got delayed because of not technical reasons or within studio reasons for delay, but that they released the trailer, people said it was so bad they delayed the game. I couldn't think of what it was for so long, but it's Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite, that trailer came out, remember the guy, monkey guy, whatever his name was, George or whatever, I don't remember what his name was, looked awful, and they delayed the game, and then it came out, and multiplayer aside, and like them taking over a year to add Forge and, you know, ditching the co-op campaign and all that stuff, campaign-wise, it turned out pretty good. So hopefully, that's what happens here. Hopefully this will be really good. I do want to address the actual time of the delays though, right? This is a, what, 4-month delay, which realistically a lot of games are getting. You can't do that much with 4 months. I mean, you can do more than they do with, let's say, betas or the Dead Island delay or the Jedi Survivor delay that are all like a month. But realistically, fundamentally, a lot of the stuff people are complaining about, which are just the core gameplay mechanics of the game and the way the game is built and just this zone style going out into the world and doing activities that are going to seem to be repetitive to progress the main story, much like Gotham Knights, that's not something you can change in 4 months. That's something the whole game is built upon. So while things might be improved, the skill trees might be tweaked here and there, the character abilities and movements and all that stuff, you know, balancing changes might be made. Overall, the core gameplay of the game, the look of it, the feel of it, for the most part, isn't going to change. So, again, hopefully this will be a positive change. This will be on my top 10 best games of the year, because this could be just the inverse of a Gotham Knights or a Saints Row, a co-op, fun multiplayer game to just mess around with a good story. Now, from there, let's move on to more recent news. So speaking of delayed games, Dead Island 2 didn't get delayed again. I mean, it did by a month, and then it did that first time by 10 years, but you get my point. Dead Island 2, a lot of gameplay's been coming out. It's coming out relatively soon, and so I want to talk a tiny bit about the gameplay. So, it looks a lot more RPG-ish than the first game. They use these cards that they kind of use as basically a skill tree that, you know, seems a bit more modern than the first game. But other than that, it seems like what they're doing to not kind of copy the other zombie games that there's so many of now is just doing a lot of the stuff they did 10 years ago and tweaking it a tiny bit so that it's different because the design is so old, and then just updating that design a little bit. So what I mean by that, like this for example, IGN just does a great job of just proving my point for me. Look at Dying Light 2 and the parkour system and all that stuff. It's not what they're going for, right? It's very bright, it's very stupid, it's very over the top, and that's what Dead Island has always been. That's what we need. That's a change of pace. Now still you got all these dumb health bars and status effects over the zombies, which again, I'm sure can be turned off. I'm sure there's options for that, I hope. You got your brutal takedowns and all of that good stuff, but then this is my biggest concern, right? This option to have a range of characters to choose from that have locked abilities to them. If you look at something, again, like Dying Light, or really any other game, there's a skill tree that allows you to choose the way you want to play while you're playing the game so that you can make those changes based on the gameplay style you like as you progress through the different enemy types and the story and all of that good stuff. Here, and I don't know how essential this is to the actual gameplay, but this forces you to kind of pick up playstyle before you've really played anything of the game. You don't know how the game handles, the way the zombies are going to interact with the player, how many zombies there are, what type of player you want to be, if you need to be ranged, if you want to be a tanky character, if you want to be a quick character. You don't know any of that when you're choosing a character so early on. Now, it is Dead Island. You just get weapons and smash zombies' heads in, so for the most of it, Doesn't really matter, but that's just one of the things I saw that I'm not a big fan of. This card skill tree system, again, I'm getting to the point where I'm kind of done with skill trees. It's fine in games that use cards, especially zombies games that use cards. Back for Blood, for example, I just haven't been the biggest fan of. It's just a more complicated way to do something that works perfectly well in a skill tree. Now, I'm not complaining. I'm kind of nitpicking here, to be honest. The game looks good. It's going to more than likely be good. They're doing all of the things on paper right. It's just based on the number of weapons, based on the story, the enemy types, and the progression, right? If you look at something like Dying Light, for example, and it's very hard to get these two games not confused, and they both are zombie games that start with D, but Dying Light, the only thing that keeps that first game alive and paced so well is you've played all of the zombie combat, you've played crafting weapons and your Molotovs and your spike bombs and your spiked bats and all of that stuff. You've played that before in the Dead Island games. But what keeps that game working is the parkour, and right as it gets stale, they add a grappling hook, and then a couple hours later, when that's starting to get stale, they add guns, right? That's what works with the first Dying Light. With Dying Light 2, my problem with the game is that, one, the story just wasn't as good, but two, the weapons just weren't as good, and without weapons, or any type of firearms, or guns, or really any real projectiles, yes, there was that stupid secondary gun, but I wouldn't count that. It lacked progression and pacing. That was my problem with Dying Light 2, and it had a bunch of meaningless side quests. Hopefully, Dead Island 2 is able to stay away from that, and it feels like you're doing something meaningful when you do these side quests, and you're getting something that's cool. The first game had a lot of really good blueprints and unique things that you could unlock, so hopefully that continues on here. Now, the final thing for the video, something that you've probably forgot about. A year ago, there was a trailer for a Wonder Woman game, because I forgot about this, but just the tiniest bit of details came out around this game. So it's going to be an open world RPG game. That's it. That's literally all the information we have a year later. Now, take your time, because if this is done right, it can be really good, and it can work out in my favor a lot. Because if this is done well, then they can get over the whole, oh, you can't make a video game about a super overpowered character, and then they can make a Flash game, and I'll be all over that. So I need this game to do well. I need everybody to pre-order this game, buy the digital deluxe edition, buy your collector's edition, get like the little book like in Harry Potter with the wand, spend all your money on this game so it does really well, and then make a Flash game, alright? That's my push for the Wonder Woman game. I mean, obviously I hope the Wonder Woman game is good, but I don't have much information on it. Now you're going to be slotting out, I assume, with it being an RPG game, different swords and shields and probably outfits that you'll unlock through playing to the game, and different comic accurate and movie outfits that you'll get, I'm sure. And hopefully there's just not a Verizon Wireless or AT&T bundle that you can get from getting the game at your local 7-Eleven like the Avengers game. As long as we can stray away from that, I think we'll be okay. That's all I have. I really have nothing to talk about. Like, nothing's happened. I haven't made a video in like 9 days now by the time I finish this one, and just nothing's happened. No announcements. Like, Starfield comes out in September, sure, but like I didn't feel the need to talk about that. And it's just really nothing's been going on. But I'm playing God of War, so that video will come out eventually. So eventually. That's all I got.